But my name is Dr. Leah Hahn. My background is I have a degree in biology and anthropology. Dr. Scott and I actually met in chiropractic school, and when we were there, we actually really focused on something called network spinal analysis, which we'll talk about how that applies to stress physiology. But network spinal analysis is a chiropractic technique that really focuses on the nervous system and really shifting how the nervous system is functioning. I also have a background in functional medicine. We started Body and Balance in 2005. And so our whole mission has always been to bring vibrant health to our community. There's so much focus throughout the world in terms of disease and sickness. And if we can create a foundation for health and really help kind of people get to the core issues in terms of how they handle stress and many different aspects of their lifestyle, it can be life changing. So our whole mission is to really bring vibrant health for our community. So as we go through this, I have a lot of information in this class. If you don't mind, if you can type in questions in the Q&A, I can try to check them here and there as we go through the class. But I may need to wait until the end, but I'll make sure that I save time to make sure that we are addressing questions that people may have. So stress is such an important topic, and I am really passionate about it because it contributes in so many ways to people's quality of life and their health. And so one of the things that I've seen in my own family is that just about every woman relative that I have has an autoimmune condition that has really been driven by stress physiology. And so I've been doing lots of research over the years, lots of studying, and I think it's such a vital topic that we all need to be aware of how it's affecting us and what we can do about it. And so we're really, in this beginning of the class, I'm going to talk more about what's happening in your physiology, so you can understand maybe how stress is specifically applying to you and in your health and your health issues. But then we also want to get into all of the strategies of so many different things that you can do to really mitigate the effects of stress. So when we talk about this, these are just the facts. So 55% of Americans feel stress on a daily basis. I feel like it's more than that. Maybe it's the people that I work with are more sensitive to stress, but that's what the research shows. The American Psychological Association states that from 2019 that their average rating for stress for people was 4.9. That is an improvement for what in the past they saw as a stress rating of 6.2. Again, I would say a lot of the people that I work with would rate their stress level between 6 and 10. I mean, that would just be average for them. So again, there's a range, and it has so much to do with our perception and how we view experiences within our life. But again, this is what the research shows. Research does say that Americans between the ages of 30 and 49 tend to be the most stressed or feel the most stress. Again, I work with people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s, all groups. And I think it affects everybody. I think stress is a major issue for everybody, but that's, again, what research shows. Women are often reported to be more stressed out than men. In 2018, a third of US-based respondents visited a doctor due to stress-related conditions. That number continues to rise. We don't have as current of research, but they do know that number is escalating. And they show that 57% of people actually feel absolutely paralyzed by stress. So a variety of facts to just kind of give you some background of what the research is showing. But again, I think it has so much to do with personal perception and our experiences that we have within our lives and how we perceive those things. So these are the most common stress cause symptoms: headaches, increased digestive issues, having either that can show up as diarrhea or constipation for people, or having heartburn more frequently, or obviously just digestion is affected. And we're going to talk about the physiology behind that. Having increased muscle tension, feeling that tension, especially in the neck and the shoulders for a lot of people, specifically around the spine. People will often experience chest pain. A lot of people experience fatigue with stress, sleep issues, a variety of symptoms that can actually show up in our body. The emotions that are consistently correlated with stress that affect your overall well-being are things like anxiety, restlessness, lack of motivation, feeling overwhelmed. Mayo Clinic states that people under stress tend to have more angry outbursts. They tend to socially withdraw. So obviously those are those chronic emotional states. When they become chronic, they shift your behavior and they impact the decisions that you make. And that is what can really impact your health. So we really want to go into then, how does this affect people in terms of their lifestyle? How does it affect them in terms of their behavior? High stress shows up in people's behavior in terms of making poor decisions. I'm going to really, again, we're going to hit on that in terms of how that is what the physiology of that is, because there's a true reason why you make poor decisions when you're under stress. Research shows that people often handle a higher stress level by eating more, drinking more caffeine, smoking. Some people will exercise more. Some people will take out exercise because they don't feel that they have the time for it or they can't handle it at that time. Some people will use illicit drugs. Some people will choose to rest or sleep less and just consume more caffeine or whatever they can to get through that situation. The problem is like when you think of any kind of behavior, maybe in the short term, it's not such a big deal, but in terms of the long term, what happens to that situation, what happens to someone's body when that stress stretches into a long-term situation. So short-term stress is becoming a long-term situation. So when you think about that, there's very specific situations that have been researched actually, that some of the most common situations that can cause short-term stress to become long-term stress include caregiving, especially caregiving for a loved one, the death of a loved one, a chronically high stress job or career, long-term financial issues, family or relationship issues. Those types of stressors, and you think of the pandemic thrown into all of that, can really take what could be a short-term stress and turn it into a long-term stress physiology in terms of your physiology. So the thing that I wanted to bring up with this is that the quality of the thoughts that we think about our daily situations, or even what we are thinking about our long-term situations, create emotional states that cause stress for us. So what we mean by that is if you're thinking about like negative thoughts that are patterned and consistent, or you have feelings of helplessness or overwhelm that happen frequently, prolonged grief, prolonged anger, and frustration, that can create an ongoing stress response in your body for years. And so that's something that we're really going to hit on when we talk about strategies, is how do you change your state? So what I mean changing your state, it can be changing your energetic state, changing your emotional state, but that has such a link in terms of how stress is affecting your body. So it's something that we definitely need to hit on. But in order to understand the stress response, I want to go through the basic physiology of stress. So what this looks like. It's really important to realize that the stress response is actually meant to be natural. It's a natural response in our bodies, and it's designed to help us deal with challenging situations. And so when that physiological response is triggered within our body, it's designed to help you cope with a situation. It's not meant to be evil or damaging. So when we think about this, though, the first system to handle stress within your physiology is the nervous system. And when I talk about that, I'm specifically talking about the autonomic part of the nervous system. It's the part of the nervous system that you can't control. So think of it as like automatic. It has two different sides to it. It has a sympathetic side and it has the parasympathetic side. The sympathetic side would be like our survival response of running from a lion. It's our fight or flight response. There's a purpose behind it, and it has ensured our survival for thousands of years. The parasympathetic side of the nervous system then is for healing and repair and relaxation. So after running from the lion, what does your body do to restore normal function? It kicks in the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, or it should, to create healing and repair once the threat has been removed. So think of like if you're driving down I-70 and you see flashing lights behind you or you hear a siren, your body immediately drives that sympathetic response to create fight or flight, and it kicks it into high gear. And there's two different hormones that are specifically that we're really going to hit on that are involved with this. One is adrenaline, the other is cortisol. Those immediately are pumped into your bloodstream, and that's what creates that response of the heart rate increasing, feeling that pounding heart. The blood pressure would be increased. Your blood sugar would rise in that situation to provide more fuel for the muscles to like escape the situation. The blood flow to the muscles would also be increased. Respiratory rate and perspiration would increase. The pupils would dilate. So that would be a very strong fight or flight response. What is important to realize in that sympathetic dominant fight or flight response is that the function of the gastrointestinal tract, your digestion, your immune system, and your reproductive system would be decreased because they are not necessary for survival at that time. They are not; those systems are not immediately needed for you to function or for you to escape whatever that stressor is at that time. And that is really key. We're going to hit on that a lot later, that the process of dampening the organ systems and how that applies to the whole sympathetic stress response is a really important piece of how people develop long-term health issues because of stress. So again, the drivers of the stress response then are going to be adrenaline and they're going to be cortisol. And in those situations, the thing to realize about it is that adrenaline actually returns or decreases very quickly once the stressor is removed. So you think of like that huge stress response you heard from the siren that you felt in your body from hearing the sirens, your body would kick out that adrenaline, but the adrenaline is going to burn off fairly quickly, especially if you are able to move. So if you're able to walk, if you're able to go on a quick run, if you're able to exercise, the adrenaline will be utilized very quickly and return to normal, or it should fairly quickly within your body. The lingering cortisol is what creates the problem, especially when the stress response is triggered repeatedly. So that's when a short-term stress response is life-saving, but as our stress response becomes more constant and chronic, we start to develop a long-term state of high cortisol, and that's much more difficult to deal with. So cortisol, when we think of like, again, like a short-term stress response, that has an effect of actually decreasing inflammation within the body. And think of inflammation as being like damage to the cells. So the short-term cortisol decreases that, and it gives the immune system a very short-term surge of protection. But if the stress becomes more than like a passing ambulance and we're starting to deal with chronic stress, the organs and tissues of the body then are exposed to constant ongoing stream of cortisol. And our cells can then become desensitized to the cortisol that should actually be helping us. If that makes sense, cortisol plays a big role in this. So when cortisol isn't mitigated then, and we have this long-term exposure to cortisol, the inflammation in our body is no longer mitigated and it can take over. So acute inflammation would be like getting a paper cut or spraining an ankle. We would feel redness and maybe swelling and discomfort, but the body in that process of creating the inflammation is mounting a process to heal the injury. So that's a normal response. Our body should be doing that. But with chronic inflammation, it becomes more subtle. It's like the cells of the body have this silent and prolonged injury response, and eventually that creates damage to the cells. And it can remain fairly subtle for years. So it's taken, in terms of research, it has taken years for scientists to really understand the role that chronic inflammation plays behind so many diseases, or plays into so many diseases. So if we go back to that sympathetic stress response and we have increased blood flow to the muscles, and we have increased heart rate and increased respiration, and our blood sugar is higher, and our immune system is depressed, and our GI function is depressed, and our reproductive function is depressed, that is becoming the consistent and steady state for our body. So cortisol can latch on to specific receptors on the cell membranes, on the cell walls of every single cell in the body, and trigger a chain of events. So think of how high cortisol then is specifically increasing aspects of physiology and dampening others. So especially when it comes to dampening immune system, GI function, reproduction. So this is what we want to tie into this. And this is the big piece that I want you to really understand. If you were at the last class that we did on optimizing genetics, this what we're talking about right now really plays into that. So when you think of the stress response, all of this is going to play into our genetics. So I want to kind of go over into the field of epigenetics. The field of epigenetics is, if you look at this Time magazine cover, DNA is not your destiny. So we need to understand this piece of it. So epigenetics looks at how genes are activated or how genetic activity is dampened due to lifestyle factors. So think of what you eat, how you think, how you handle your stress, how you rest, how you exercise, if you meditate, all of these things play a role in what our genetics actually express. So in that way, your genetics actually play a role in individualizing how stress will affect us. So we all have strengths and weaknesses within our genetics. When we are in a chronically stressed state, it really emphasizes maybe the weaknesses in our genetics. But if we can combat that with our lifestyle and really implement proactive strategies, you can mitigate the effects of how that, of basically how what is being expressed through your DNA, have it express more positive attributes or disease protecting attributes, and dampen the negative effects that could be expressed within our DNA. So it's basically, if you think about that, chronic stress may in one person set them up for diabetes or cardiovascular issues if they're not paying attention to their lifestyle, and for another person, the chronic stress could cause joint inflammation or an autoimmune condition. So it really looks at like the power, I guess, and what I'm trying to say is that you do have so much power in terms of this. We just need to make sure that the right factors are in place so that you can handle stress appropriately and be proactive about it, which is what we're going to get to in just a minute. So we talked about how cortisol latches onto the cell membranes and creates a chain of events. So when you look at this, long-term elevated cortisol suppresses the effectiveness of the immune system by lowering the number of lymphocytes, which are white blood cells that help us fight infections. So as the lymphocyte level is lowered, more chronically, you become more susceptible to infections or viruses or the common cold or the common flu. A chronically activated stress response may actually accelerate the progression of chronic illness, especially as the immune system becomes more and more dysregulated. So that's really key, is that dysregulation of the immune system. If your nervous system is constantly going into fight or flight stress or staying in that chronic stress state, the more and more dysregulated the immune system will become. A big part of that is the heightened cortisol levels. Over time, that can lead to chronic fatigue, it can lead to exhaustion, and the more dysregulated the immune system can become, and genetics will play into this as well, but it can lead into autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriasis, fibromyalgia, inflammatory bowel disease, osteoarthritis, even Crohn's disease. One of the most common things that I see with patients is that they'll have dealt with a really stressful time and then eczema will show up within their body. And so what I know right away is that that stress response has been leading to dysregulation of the immune system, and the body is basically attacking itself in that situation. So we need to not only get the the nervous system back on track, we also need to allow that to basically create like a healing response within the immune system as well. Okay. So there's a strong link with this, and we want to talk about with this that long-term elevated cortisol is associated with an increased plaque buildup on the arterial walls, which can contribute to high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease. So think of the sympathetic response. It's increasing the heart rate, it's increasing the respiratory rate. When this becomes a long-term response, it's actually causes the cardiovascular system to wear out more quickly. Having that prolonged sympathetic response is also associated with asthma. It's associated with actually increasing blood sugar. So I've had patients who, maybe they eat really well and they exercise, but their stress level is so high and they're not able to combat that appropriately that it's actually keeping their blood sugar elevated, which can lead to type 2 diabetes. So that really increases the risk of that. Again, there's things that can be done. I promise I'm getting to the good stuff, but it's something to be aware of. And that has such a link. Type 2 diabetes has such a link with cardiovascular issues as well. Sustained increased cortisol also leads to weight gain, especially around the middle of the body, visceral fat, which is really dangerous for our organ systems, and it starts to become a huge player in cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Cortisol can make it really difficult to lose weight, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It can increase especially if cortisol is affecting someone's sleep patterns, which I know for me and in my past, that has been how cortisol really affects me, is it really affects my sleep. And when I don't sleep well, then everything is affected. So we'll talk about strategies for that as well tonight. Because stressing increases our blood sugar, our bodies actually become more acidic when we're under high stress levels. It makes it really difficult to lose fat at all when your body is in an acidic state. Long-term sleep issues can be caused by stress physiology, but also the GI dysfunction, the reproductive system, the hormonal levels that can be affected, the acidity, the toxicity, all of it. It can affect joints. When we have high cortisol, it can increase inflammation within the joints and cause osteoarthritis to really be happen more rapidly within the body. So again, we can get these things under control. When reproductive function is affected from chronic stress, impotency as well as infertility are increased. If there's depression of the gastrointestinal system, that can cause, again, chronic constipation, indigestion, irritable bowel syndrome, gastric ulcers. I'm going through really positive stuff, guys, so hang in here with me. But chronic stress can also cause what's called leaky gut. In the next couple months, we'll be doing a digestive health class because it's such an important thing. But so many people are showing up as having leaky gut. And so leaky gut is a situation in which the gap junctions within the walls of the small intestine, basically they should be like this and they become like this. And so we have gaps in them, and food particles can get into the bloodstream, which the immune system attacks. People will notice that. They might notice that as feeling heartburn, or that they feel really bloated after eating, or they have chronic constipation or diarrhea, or alternating constipation or diarrhea. It can cause a whole host of issues. It weakens the immune system. It can affect your sleep or affect your stress levels. But that's a really important thing that we want to get under control, because when we have gut inflammation, it literally affects your brain. It affects everything. It affects how you sleep. It affects your energy level, digestion, how you can get nutrients into the body. So it's an important issue. We'll make sure that we cover that in a class in the future because it's a big one. Brain health is affected. So chronic stress has been linked with dementia. It's been linked with chronic depression and anxiety. The thing to realize about that is that stress actually decreases blood flow to the frontal cortex of the brain, which is your higher decision-making center. So we talked about how sometimes when we're under stress, we just make poor decisions. It's like we go into habit, and even if we know that that habit doesn't support what our goal is, it's difficult for the brain to kick in and actually make a higher level decision in that situation. So in that situation, we're using the primitive brain, which is in the brain stem, and we are more likely to maybe not exercise when we need to, or we're choosing to eat really sugary or like carbohydrate-rich foods because they're comforting. They may not fulfill our long-term health goals, but that is what the primitive brain is telling us to do in that time. We may speak poorly to our loved ones because we're not as in control of our emotions as we would like to be in that situation. So again, we want to make sure, how can we keep the body in a state where our higher brain centers are able to kick in and stay more activated and kind of stay away from that stress response. Chronic inflammation caused by chronic stress is dangerous because it can go on for years and it can be unrecognized. Our current medical system, when you think about this, and here's more information too about what we just talked about with the how things are being affected. But chronic inflammation caused by chronic stress is dangerous. Our medical system is very focused on identifying symptoms. And so when they do that, when they're in that, like how that process works is they're looking for symptoms that then they can take action based on those symptoms. The problem is that most people with chronic health issues, or they're having a major health event happening, like think of rheumatoid arthritis or a heart attack or severe gut issues. The physiology that created those issues, that created the symptoms that are being seen by the medical community, the physiology that created those issues has been going on often for a patient for 20 to 30 years, maybe 10 years, 5 years, but they've been going on for a period of time before they're actually recognized as a disease process. And it makes it difficult to deal with because the lifestyle that created the issue has been going on for years and needs to be modified with the appropriate measures in place for healing. So we want to look at this a little bit differently. And it's not to fault the medical system, it's how our system works in the United States. But if we can create more education among patients to be more aware of how their lifestyle is affecting these things and what they can do about it and really take power or be proactive about it, it can make a huge difference in terms of the health outcomes. So again, just something that we need to be aware of. Stress physiology is creating chronic inflammation, and when combined with lifestyle and genetics, it plays out for people in different ways. So we all have those strengths and those weaknesses. We all have our individual DNA makeup, but the root issues are really common for most people. So this is why I became a chiropractor versus a medical doctor, is that I wanted to practice and teach tools that people could apply to their lifestyle on a consistent basis to move their body into a state of healing and health versus disease and suffering. It's very different than the medical paradigm. So the physiology that chronic stress creates can be an underlying issue in so many chronic diseases. And while our medical system is really good at recognizing acute situations, like if you were in a car accident or you fell off a ladder or something acute like that, they're amazing at that. But we're ranked 39th in the world in terms of our healthcare system because we're not so great at dealing with chronic conditions. But there's so much hope. There's so much that you can do to really take control and take a really proactive strategy in terms of this. So we've heard this, that we all have stress. It's how you choose to handle it that makes all the difference, but what can we do to handle it? And so one of the things that we really want to go into is shifting your state. So how Scott and I have practiced for the last almost 20 years is that how you think, how you move, how you eat makes a huge difference in terms of your overall health. And when I go through this information, I want you to think about stress as most of us, I think, at least in today's society, have chronic stress. It is something that is a reality in terms of what we're dealing with. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people. So when I talk about this, I want you to think about how there's not one thing that I'm going to talk about that's going to be the magic bullet. It's going to be how you layer your day in terms of your strategies for how you deal with stress. And so I will kind of go through, I can give you some examples, but I want you to have multiple strategies that you are implementing throughout your day on a daily basis until they become habit. And I want them to become habit because the times when, again, when you are under severe stress, your lower brain centers are going to kick in and maybe help you choose things that are they're not serving your higher purpose. And so we want to make sure that when things become habit, which it will take up to 3 months or 6 months or a year of working on this, but that when those stressful times happen, because you have the right habits in place, your lower brain centers can really just take over and perform the habit. And that's all they have to do. We don't have to think really hard about what we're trying to create. So the first strategy that I want to go over is how you think. And so this is a huge part of, again, shifting your state, shifting your energetic state. And the reason I feel this is so important is that research has shown that we think about 60,000 thoughts every single day, maybe some of us more than that. And 95% of those thoughts have been shown to be the exact same thoughts that we thought yesterday. And unfortunately, 80% of those thoughts are shown to be negative. So the reason I recommend meditation, and again, some of my clients have been meditating every day for 60 years. I have some clients who have never done it before, and we're starting out from scratch. But the reason I think it's so important is that it creates an awareness of what you're actually thinking about. If you're not aware of what you're thinking about, it's really easy to be maybe beating yourself up or thinking really negative thoughts that are not serving you at all, or thinking fearful thoughts that are very unlikely to happen. But unless you're really aware of it, it's going to be difficult to change it. And it's the first step in creating that change is to actually be aware of what you're thinking about. So when we start the meditation process, there's many different ways to do this. I love to use guided meditation. I feel like I'm one of those people that has a hard time not thinking. And so when I can listen to something, I keep pulling my focus back to the voice that I'm listening to. And that really works for me. I love guided meditation that really cues me to take deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, that guides my thinking process. I love guided meditation that uses affirmations. I mean, there's so many different things you can do. I have some clients that just sit down and they create a quiet space for maybe 2 minutes, and that really works for them. I have some clients that practice the art of just present time consciousness. So whatever they're doing, they direct their thought process into exactly what they're doing. So even something like washing the dishes can become a meditative process that calms their body. Instead of thinking about their to-do list and what they need to do next, they're thinking about what the water feels like, how they're turning the water on, how they're holding the scrub brush to scrub the dishes, whatever it is, but they're bringing their consciousness into exactly what they're doing at that time. So there's many different ways to do this. There's no right or wrong. I have been meditating for about 10 years now. I have some days that it's like, wow, that was amazing. And I have days where it's like, wow, I feel like I thought about my grocery list the whole time or what I needed to do the whole time I was trying to meditate. But I will say my awareness of what I think about, how my body is reacting to what I think about has increased tremendously, and it's made a huge impact in terms of my health. What I love about that in a physiological perspective is that meditation, as well as breathing practices, especially in through the nose, out through the mouth, breathing practices, increase the parasympathetic side of our physiology. So when you think of healing and repair, and most of us being shunted over to sympathetic type of activity, we want to have that balance and create more parasympathetic physiology within our bodies. And meditation is an activity that will do that, as well as breath work practices. Okay. So for me and my stress level, rest has always been the big thing. Sleep has always been my big issue. And I will say that I think it is one of the most important things to work on when you've had chronic stress within your life. Rest is one of the most important things that you can do in terms of resetting your nervous system. So if good quality has been a victim to your stress, I want you to work on reclaiming the art of sleeping by the art of resting. And what I mean by that is if you can take naps through the day, or I have a client who said she gets so stressed by worrying about needing to fall asleep that she can't fall asleep. So one of the things that works really well in those situations is just to take a breathing break, sit down, and purposely maybe set a timer on your watch or your phone, but for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can devote to it, deep breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, but take a break. Get away from screens, get away from technology, lay down or sit in a comfortable chair and take a breathing break. But taking those breaks during the day to specifically breathe or rest are very calming for the nervous system. They can help drop cortisol levels. They can help drop adrenaline levels. They can reset and refocus the brain, and they can help you prepare for a good night's sleep. So I'm a firm believer, maybe not taking like an hour and a half nap in the middle of the day, but at least a 20-minute time period just to check out, breathe. I typically, before I come into the office every day, I take a walk and I take a breathing break. So I'll put in meditation and I will check out for a good 15 minutes, and it totally resets my day and my energy. But I want you to take that time because you are literally reclaiming adrenal health, adrenal organs that produce the cortisol and adrenaline. It can really give those a break, which is such a healthy thing to do. And then it's practicing good sleep hygiene, which are the basic things like making sure that you're in a cool, dark space for sleep. And we're talking about at night, to making sure that your electronics are off an hour before you're trying to go to bed. I have many clients who have had great success using a grounding mat. I love an exercise that one of my coaches taught me called legs up the wall, which resets the vagus nerve. And it's literally sitting with your bottom real close to the wall with your legs literally resting up the wall. And I might stay there for 10 minutes and deep breathe to reset the vagus nerve, which is a huge part of the autonomic nervous system, but reset that before I'm preparing for sleep. So just some things to think about. But the key for this, and it ties right into exercise, is that if you have been in a chronic stress state, exercise that is really intense is the worst thing that you could do. And the reason I say that is because it will increase your cortisol levels and it can cause your body to really be thrown off for sleep that night. So it's thinking of like, if you're getting good rest, you can exercise hard. You can exercise more intensely. If you're not getting good rest, it is not the time to be exercising in an intense way. It can actually have a negative effect for you. So for the thing about that, for stressed people, more inflamed people, light exercise is appropriate. I still want you to move. I still want you to get exercise, but that means that it's not the time for like CrossFit. It's not the time for starting a new running program or running really intensely. Instead, in those situations when cortisol is high, we want to consider, or like if sleep is off and you're not getting restorative rest, yoga is awesome. Pilates is awesome. Walking, light weightlifting might be okay, but we're talking light. So it's thinking about exercise as more for movement in those situations. It's not the time for really intense exercise. So one of the game changers for me, I used to sadly get up, I would have a cup of coffee and I would go right into basically almost in a fasted state, then go into doing weights and heavy cardio. And the problem that created was it really increased my cortisol level. So I didn't get the kind of gains I wanted from exercise. It threw my blood sugar off through the day. It made me really kind of tired and wired, and it affected my sleep at night. So now my rule is if I've slept really well, I work out, I have my more intense workout days. If I didn't sleep as well, where I feel like I'm in a higher stress state, that's a day for Pilates or yoga that day, or making sure that I get a really great walk in. So that's a really important rule to be following. And it's also to know that when you exercise, if you're in a stress state, your cortisol level is already high. If you exercise in a fasted state, meaning you haven't eaten for quite a while, it's going to increase your blood sugar and your cortisol even more to cope with that. So anytime that you're that you're exercising, I would prefer that you've eaten something and that you eat something with protein in it immediately after working out. And that can help mitigate the blood sugar issue or having a higher cortisol response from the exercise. So no fasted exercise when you're in a stress state. Another game changer is time and nature. Studies have actually shown in the last few years that Americans are more aware than ever that they are missing time in nature, that it is probably way more important than we ever realized. So I would love for that time in nature to be restorative for you, to use it as maybe even a walking meditation, to really take in the colors and the sense of what's in your surroundings, just to be present in the moment. But that time in nature is so therapeutic, and that can actually help to decrease cortisol levels as well. Okay. So I wanted to really go through a little bit about how network spinal analysis fits into this in terms of the healing response with stress. So many patients come to us because they have chronic pain issues. They may have headaches or sciatic issues or numbness and tingling or just pain within their joints and their body. But even in the last couple of years, there's been so much research published about network resetting the stress response, and more patients are seeking NSA care as a modality to heal stress physiology, to reset their immune systems, to reset their stress response. And so when we talk about that, the reason that's so important is that NSA actually combines how we will actually go back. We talked about how deep breathing and meditation will increase parasympathetic physiology. NSA will actually decrease the sympathetic physiology. So when we talked about how adrenaline levels wear off, but the stress response can become prolonged and chronic with higher cortisol levels, NSA will actually decrease that type of physiology and bring peace to the muscles and the tendons and the ligaments and the spinal structure, but it also decreases the pressure that's on the nervous system that's created by an inflamed and overly active sympathetic system. That will promote healing, but over time, it will also increase blood flow to the frontal cortex of the brain, which is your higher thinking centers. So they've actually done research again in how people under NSA care are able to implement new habits, make different decisions, shift their routines, have higher thought processes, even when they're under stress, and it can help them with that part of the healing process. So NSA promotes a sense of well-being that I really feel like is no other. I absolutely love to get adjusted. But one of the things with that is if you've ever noticed, if you've ever been really stressed about something and you had your adjustment and it's like NSA adjustments will take the charge away from that stressed feeling. That effect has been studied and published in research journals. And the reason that is that NSA temporarily suspends unconscious automatic behavior patterns, and it teaches the body a new way of dealing with stress that can allow people to work through emotional issues and traumas by learning to release the energy without direct confrontation of the issue. That has been groundbreaking. It's been leading to patients having a deeper sense of self, being more in touch with their needs, as well as encouraging them to make better lifestyle choices. NSA also helps with immune system regulation, moving a dysregulated immune system to a more regulated immune system, producing more T4 cells to actually fight off infection, but then also to regulate an overactive immune system as well. So we see a lot of autoimmune patients because of that, because of the immune system regulation component of that. Excuse me. It also enhances brain function. After an adjustment, the brain is actually functioning. They've shown this with functional MRI 95% more efficiently. I always would get adjusted before a test because I wanted that really strong frontal cortex engagement, but it can help with decision making, cellular communication throughout the body. So, and it also is just such a way, just like meditation or deep breathing, but it's a way to change your state. It's a way to change your energetic state so that your body is in more of that high functioning, high capacity mode. The other thing I just will mention with that, because I am, and I wrote about this in I'll talk about the different blogs that are out at the different articles I wrote for this month. But one of the things that they're really showing is that for anyone to heal, their nervous system needs to be more regulated. And so I wrote about a lot about dysautonomia, which is what we've been working on for years, but it's now being recognized by the medical community as having a dysregulated dysregulated nervous system. So either exactly what we're talking about, being shunted more over to the sympathetic side versus the parasympathetic side, or vice versa. Because NSA is able to regulate that, I think it's a really important topic, because if I see so many patients that have Lyme disease, maybe have been chronic exposed to chronic mold, that have dysautonomia, like high stress situations, and their body cannot heal until they get the immune system or the nervous system in check. And so that plays such an essential role in healing, but it's finally becoming more recognized in the literature as well. So we want to talk about dietary strategies. The big one to be aware of in terms of how your body is handling stress is how you are consuming carbohydrates and sugar. And the reason we say that is because cortisol causes sugar cravings. But when you consume a lot of excess carbohydrates or sugar because of the stress, it's like setting fire to the existing inflammation that's within the body. And so something that you can do is become more mindful of the sugar intake. You can use food journaling. You can start to notice your patterns of eating, what kind of choices you're making when you're under stressful situations. But my best goal would be for someone to, when you are not under a stress state, to be conscious of eating more protein, more fiber, eating healthy choices of fat, eating healthy carbohydrates and maybe some smaller portions. So again, you're actually changing those cravings and you're changing the gut flora before you get to that really stressful state, which happens. We go through cycles of stress within our lives. So if we can build better habits and really improve how the gut is functioning, it can decrease those cravings. So we're making better choices even when we're under stress. There's a huge role between toxicity in someone's body and dealing with chronic stress. And so one of the things that can make a difference is really trying to eat as many organic resources as possible to support gut toxicity in the immune system, especially if someone is also dealing with GI issues or leaky gut issues and immune system issues. I also strongly would like someone to consider different supplements to help them to have more support for oxidative oxidative stress. And so what that looks like is when your body is in a stressful time period, it's going to use nutrients much more quickly than it would when it's in a less stress time. And so things that can make a big difference with that. There's a supplement called Dynamic Fruits and Greens, which actually increases alkalinity. Which, when you think of a stressed body, becomes more acidic. The fruits and greens is basically like a powdered green supplement. And so my goal would be like you're eating like at least 6 cups of vegetables a day, which would increase your alkalinity. But sometimes we need even more alkalinity than that, or we can't get enough vegetables in throughout the day. And so this is a supplement that can help support that and help us get like an extra serving of vegetables, basically. It reduces cravings, it balances blood sugar, and it really increases our antioxidants, which we burn through when we're in a stressful state. We have basic B complex, or our Biotics 3BG supplement. So the adrenal cortex of the adrenals, kind of like the outer lining of the adrenals, is what produces our adrenaline and cortisol. And so when you can actually support the adrenal glands by giving them increased B vitamins, it can actually help your body stabilize some of the physiological stress response. So your body uses B vitamins like crazy when it's under a stressful time period. So I highly recommend having a B complex support in those time periods, especially. I love a probiotic. I think when we're under stress, our gut flora is impacted, which then impacts our digestion and impacts our sleep and our mood and our immune system. And so having a good probiotic can actually help to reset the gut flora and make sure that we have a healthy balance happening. EPA DHA 720 Metagenics is actually, so when we think of an EPA DHA supplement, is actually helping to decrease the amount of inflammation within our bodies and to mitigate that. Every cell in your body is made up of, when you think of that, the EPA DHA, the omega-3s. And so when we have healthy fats and we supplement with those, it can decrease the inflammation within our bodies, promote brain health, immune system health, all of it. And then a D3K2 supplement is critical. That D3K2, those supplements, I like them in combination because they really help to build proper bone health. But they're also what's called a kinase inhibitor, which allows the cells to actually communicate more properly and to cause cell-to-cell regulation, help our immune systems, cancer prevention, as well as heart health. But in order for you to absorb calcium, you need D3 and K2, and they're pretty tough nutrients to get efficiently, especially when a lot of us wear sunscreen or we're not outdoors as often as we would like to be. Other advanced nutritional strategies that can, when the body starts to know, if I'm working with a client who's extremely stressed, my first goal again is to regulate the nervous system, allow their system to get into a less stressed state. But then a secondary strategy is often detoxification. So when you think of how the stress is affecting the immune system and the gut, it's very easy for the body to become toxic. And when we think of like, I have a lot of clients that will say, well, why would I be toxic? Well, we think of our food sources, highly processed food sources, our environment and the toxicity that just can exist within our environment, the air that we breathe. But stress itself and the inflammation that it creates can cause us to become toxic. And so I've worked with, Scott and I have developed detoxification strategies over the years. Our goal is always that they are gentle, They're not like a tremendous amount of fasting or anything like that, but they are programs that actually help to upregulate your body's own ability to clear toxicity from the liver, the kidneys, the digestive system. They decrease the strategies, the detoxification strategies decrease the acidity while increasing the alkalinity, which can help support fat loss or help to shift body composition so your body's able to gain more muscle and decrease fat. It's helpful for long-term blood sugar control, cellular healing, increases antioxidant consumption. So it really can be a foundational shift for someone. But again, we want to get out of the major chronic stress and get the body into a better space where it can accept those kinds of nutritional strategies that will be very supportive. So the lifestyle that we really promote then, NSA can serve as that foundational support healing process for the healing process for decreasing the sympathetic physiology and increasing the parasympathetic physiology. I would love if people could incorporate meditation and mindfulness strategies, deep breathing strategies into their daily routine. Maybe it's even 2 minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, maybe it's 20 minutes. I know it varies for me based on my day, but they're such a critical piece of being able to reclaim the quality of life throughout your day and reset your body's ability to decrease the cortisol levels, the adrenaline levels, all of it. Exercise, I would love if you could work towards high intensity interval training, but that again is not what we're starting with. We're starting with lighter mobility work, yoga, stretching, functional fitness, using Pilates, that type of lower impact workout during the intense times of stress, but then working towards being able to do more weightlifting and having a combination of mobility work, weightlifting, and then some more like cardiovascular work. That would be the ideal. But again, we work towards that and we honor where the body is at when it's in a stress state. In nutrition, we look for a supplement routine that's supportive. Some patients work towards intermittent fasting. For some people, that is not appropriate. So if it works for you, but I look again, how stressed is the body? Is it something that we can move towards? Maybe. But the biggest thing that we want is fat and carbohydrate adaptability, meaning our body can burn fat, it can burn carbohydrates. We have to get the body into a less stressed state, but long-term goal, that would be something that we would work for. And then detoxification strategies, which might even be like, it might be doing a nutritional detox, but it also might be using like an infrared sauna or red light therapy or some other kinds of strategies, helping make sure that the body is sweating on a regular basis to be able to clear toxicity and clear inflammation. And then consistent daily rest and sleep hygiene, meaning you've got a good sleep routine and you're able to get really good quality rest from that routine. That would be the ideal of what we're looking for. So again, our mission is to inspire clients to awaken to their highest potential, physical, emotional, and mental well-being. I want to go through, and I'm going to leave this open for Q&A here in just a second. Just so you know, the supplements that I talked about and all of our supplements, because it is Community Appreciation Month at our office, it is our 19th annual Community Appreciation Month. We have 15% off of all of those supplements that we talked about. And then again, Community Appreciation Month, it is our for our new patients, it's our best new patient offer of the year that includes the consult and exam report to discuss the exam findings and creating a plan of action for healing, and the first NSA adjustment, the only time of the year that we do that. All of that is for $29. So if it's something that you know of a loved one or yourself or someone that needs our help, please let them know of what we are doing for Community Appreciation Month. For our existing clients, all of the attendees of this class, as well as whoever attends our phases, stages, levels, and biofields class, will be entered into our Body Imbalance raffle. And that raffle is going to take place throughout, we'll have raffles actually throughout the month, but they'll be for massages at some local therapists that we work with. Our hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we'll be giving away some sessions of those. We'll have supplement packages as well as ChiroFlow pillows. So we'll have prizes that we're giving away throughout the month. So there's other ways to win those prizes as well. So make sure you check out the signs within the office and on our social media. and we'll be having lots of healthy snacks as we go through the month as well. So lots of ways to celebrate our 19th annual Community Appreciation Month. I just want to let you know that our coming up on April 22nd, I will be doing via Zoom for the first time ever our phases, stages, levels, and biofields class. There are so many layers to network care in terms of how people experience the world, their level of wellness, their level of advancement, what they experience on the tables. Lots of different things that we work on. And so if you haven't been to that class, I highly recommend that you get there. And if it's been a while, make sure you get to it again, because your perspective changes as you go through the healing process. You want to make sure that you hear that information. You will take it in a different way, if that makes sense. The more advanced you are through care, the longer you've been in network care. So make sure you get to that class. That will be on Zoom. You can register it through that on the events page of our website. This month, if you look under the blog section of our website, we have 2 new articles. One is Integrate to create a new level of health and well-being. I work with so many clients that have come to us dealing with chronic stress or maybe chronic like trauma that has happened within their lives. And we talk about the process that NSA goes through on a physiological and neurological level to help your body heal that and what that can do to create a whole new level of wellness and health and well-being. So want to make sure that you check out that article as well as the article on dysautonomia, which it's basically what network has been doing for years is working on dysautonomia. It's now recognized as one of the major conditions, especially after the discovery of long COVID. So it's something like as more and more Americans are dealing with long COVID, that's one of the things that can happen is they develop dysautonomia. So I think it's another important topic to discuss. So I'm going to go to the Q&A. So if anyone has questions, please make sure that you are typing into that and we'll see. So Erin, we do not have a list of supplements that we carry in the office. But if you check out our shelves, I mean, if you check out or even talk to our staff, they can definitely get you information on what we have and maybe even take a picture and text it to you. But there's lots of things that we carry online. And as many of our clients use also our services that we use through whole scripts as well as full scripts. And they can also order professional grade supplements online at a 15% discount through them. But typically our supplements in our office, we've actually never done 15% off everything. So hopefully you can find some things that you feel would be helpful, but check them out. And if you talk to our team, they will get you that information as well. So any other questions that people have? I am here. If not, we'll give it another second here. Okay, well, I don't see anything else coming up. So I so hope that information was helpful. I'm super passionate about stress and how it affects people. So let's see, maybe another question that popped up. Okay, so I'm hoping that it was helpful. Okay, so this is a question of what is the tactic to combat waking up in the middle of the night and when you can't fall back asleep? Okay. So what's happening typically when people wake up at like that 3 a.m. time and can't fall back asleep is typically when cortisol is increasing because our bodies naturally make cortisol to help us wake up in the morning, but there's a hit of cortisol that happens at that 3 a.m. time. One of the best things that you can do is get yourself out of the environment that you are currently in. And that doesn't mean that you need to leave your house, but it's to leave your bed. Go and sit in like a dimly lit area, read a book, do something to distract your mind so that your body can start to relax. It is very difficult for many people if they stay in bed and they keep ruminating over different thoughts and they can't really calm down. So I highly recommend leaving the environment. Maybe you're warm. Also, body temperature can spike around that time when cortisol increases. And so if you get warm during that time period, again, going into a cooler part of your home or some other area to change that environment, read a good book, find something that you can just do to naturally try to help your body relax so you can hopefully get back to sleep. That that would be my recommendation on that one. There are supplements that I highly recommend, but again, they're individualized. So I would again need to, when I'm working with someone and we're talking about this, we get something that I can really work with. But I personally use a supplement by Zymogen called Cortisol, which when I have like a late night like this where I'm working late and I'm kind of on, my body, I know genetically does not break down cortisol very easily. And so I use a supplement to help me in those situations. But now when I go home, I will also try to set myself up for decreasing that cortisol. So I will like take a shower and I will really try to do some like take a deep breathing time. I'll do that exercise of the legs up the wall. I will maybe do some gentle yoga poses, but I will work on naturally decreasing my cortisol, but I will often give myself some supplemental support for that as well. But that's something that I like to work on individually with each person. Okay. And so there was a question as well. Will we be able to watch a recording of this webinar? Yes, you definitely will. So tomorrow, look for an email. You will get the recording of this class emailed to you. So that information will be available to you as well. Okay. Okay. Well, anybody else? I'm going to stay here for a second or so. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through. So again, I hope the information was helpful. And you're going to see me or Dr. Scott in the office. So ask questions if there's things that we can do to be supportive in terms of supplemental support, or you need more information on ideas or books or articles or whatever. I would love to be a resource. It is, again, something I'm very passionate about. I think the things that we deal with ourselves as practitioners, we become even more passionate about helping other people with. So again, I hope you all have a great evening. I'm going to go start my stress management program now. But it was a pleasure to be here tonight. You guys have a great one. Thank you.